This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerate it. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. I had the best words. God bless the United States.
Around the nation, BYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. Would you believe it or not, it's already the middle of the week, even though we only had like Wednesday or Tuesday. It is Wednesday now. So, look, we got a good show for you guys today. It's all right, I guess. One of those. It's one of those days. No, seriously, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We've got, of course, Twitter fact-checking Donald Trump, and he's in a rage about it. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Floyd George murder that was caught on video. And we have The View weighing in, but you're going to be surprised that they actually, it's not a bad segment. It's fascinating. So it should be fun. Then, of course, we have angry Cowboys, pro-Trump Cowboys, of course, calling for the death of Democrats. Shocker. Yeah. So we've got that. Then Rahm Emanuel, it looks like he's back. So this should be a lot of fun. Hey, Zachary Torman, guess what? TYT approved the union, so good for you. And I'm not jank. I'm a little too bald and white. But welcome to the show anyway. Hopefully you enjoy it. This non-jank person doing the news. All right, anyway. So, man, let me tell you what. I do enjoy the stories that we have. So we are going to have a little bit of fun. But I don't know. Some days it just feels like we're doing the same thing over and over again, and we're not getting anywhere. And it's whenever we talk about, of course, like masks and all that stuff. And so, yeah, we keep telling people, please wear your masks and please social distance. And yeah, they're really not doing anything. So it sucks. People are just not taking this seriously. It sucks. All right. Anyway, we'll go to the first story here. We're going to talk about, of course, Donald Trump. As usual. All right. Now, President Trump was having a bit of a meltdown on Twitter over being fact-checked by his favorite medium. Now, the tweets in question had to do, of course, with his feud with mail-in ballots. The same kind of mail-in ballots, by the way, that he has used himself, as well as his spokesperson, Kayleigh McEnany. All of them have used mail-in or absentee ballots at some point. So, yeah. Now, let me read his tweets because they're fun. He says, "There's no way, zero, that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mailboxes will be robbed." That's funny. Ballots will be forged and even illegally printed out and fraudulently signed. The governor of California is sending ballots to millions of people. Anyone living in the state, no matter who they are or how they got there, will get one. That's obviously not true. All of that, of course, is complete and utter garbage. But continuing, he said that will be followed up with professionals telling all of these people, many of whom have never been thought of voting before, how and for whom to vote. This will be a rigged election. No way. Okay. Fun times. Fun times. All right. Anyway. So he does know that 34 states allow for mail-in ballots, right? Or no excuse absentee ballots, right? No, of course he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't know that 34 states, but he does know that in Florida they do allow those. So, okay, well, you can cast an absentee ballot, which again, I mentioned he did. I mean, what do you expect? The president to travel all the way to his home state to go in to cast a ballot? I mean, what are you, crazy? No, actually, that would be great. Yeah, that's fine. It's also fine when our troops do it. So why isn't it fine that everybody else gets to do it? Oh, it's because he doesn't want other people to do it. It's funny that the same people that are defending him on this, right, and say, yeah, voter fraud, voter fraud. They're the same kind of people without any sense of irony that are defending him, right, about allowing anyone else to mail in their ballots. They're the ones that are complaining about this. So the problem is, of course, mail-in ballots promote one thing: allowing everyone to vote. It promotes widespread voting, not fraud. Statistically, you're actually more likely to be struck by lightning than do mail-in voter fraud. It's just a fact, right? Facts don't care about your feelings. And the facts are, of course, that it's very, very rare to experience or to actually do mail-in voting, mail-in voter fraud, right? And all the states that actually do allow mail-in voting or absentee voting. Insane. Okay, anyway. So now the amount of voter fraud, like I said, extremely, extremely tiny. But here's the thing. The problem that Trump runs into, and the Republicans, is why they hate this so much, is that there will be more voting as a result. And they believe that since they're so unpopular, that they will lose if there are more people that vote. In fact, remember when Trump had said this?
I will tell you this. If you look at before and after, the things they had in there were crazy. They had things, levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again. They had things in there about, election days and what you do and all sorts of clawbacks. And they had things that were just totally crazy.
Totally crazy. Look, that's the reason he hates mail-in ballots. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because it's a lie. Truth is, Republicans do worse when more people vote. Currently, at least, because right now their current policy positions are incredibly unpopular. And that's what it is, because their policy positions basically exist to give more money to the rich and to corporations. So now after these tweets, of course, Twitter decides to do something they've never done before and probably never believed and never believed that they would have to do, and they would actually fact check the president. So under his tweet, there's a section labeled "What You Need to Know." Now here's what it reads, right? Trump falsely claimed that mail-in ballots would lead to a rigged election. However, fact checkers say that there's no evidence that mail-in ballots are linked to voter fraud. Trump falsely claimed that California will send in mail-in ballots to anyone living in the state, no matter who they are, who they got, or how they got there. In fact, only registered voters will receive ballots. 5 states already vote entirely by mail, and all states offer some form of mail-in absentee voting, according to NBC News. So that's the fact check, right? That's what Donald Trump is getting all butthurt about. So in response, here's what he said. Republicans feel that social media platforms totally silence conservative voices. We will strongly regulate or close them down before we can ever allow this to happen. We're going to regulate social media companies. Really? Look, hey, Republicans feel that they're being unfair. They feel. Hey, whatever happened to facts don't care about your feelings? No, social media. Look, here's the truth. Social media companies, they're giant corporations. They love the right wing. They bend over backwards to service right wingers. Twitter refuses to ban white supremacists because if they did, and white supremacist content, well, if they did, they would end up banning a lot of Republican congressmen, a lot of top conservatives on Twitter. So Jack Dorsey, he don't want to do that because he looks at a lot of people. And by the way, Jack Dorsey, I believe he's been to the White House before. So understand, he's not some raging leftist, right? No, Jack Dorsey runs a corporation, and that corporation, of course, like all corporations, they want to make money, right? And so they want to appeal to the widest user base. But at some point, they also have to enforce some sort of standards, right? And so here's what they did. They drew the line at massive lies. But let's not pretend that this is a principled stand by these companies. No, if they can find a way to use this against leftists, they totally will. Because these companies they're generally not threatened by conservatives, right? Yes, of course, their advertisers are like, hey, these guys are a little too out there. Maybe like put a damper on them, kind of stop them a little bit here, because again, that makes them lose money, right? Especially when they put together like ridiculous conspiracy theories and they spread them around using these platforms. But look, let's be honest. These companies, they're threatened by the left. Why? It's because we challenge corporate power and we challenge censorship. And so I'm glad that people are not being censored on Twitter, or actually there are cases definitely of left-wing accounts being censored on Twitter as well as right-wing accounts. And so I'm against that, right? But in this case, I'd rather them fact check than censor. I would prefer that fact check. But let's be honest, I'm much more comfortable with a neutral party that is doing these fact checks. Like, for example, you have on Facebook, you've got like the Daily Caller doing fact checks on posts. That's ridiculous. They're definitely not a neutral party. CNN and NBC, they're also not a neutral party on this. And so I would rather somebody who is actually a neutral party that is interested in facts to be able to do that other than another gigantic corporate cable network. But that's a more nuanced discussion, of course, right? But overall, I'm actually happy that they did this because, let's be honest, Donald Trump's 100% wrong on this. And people do need to know that. Not that it convinces anybody who's a MAGA guy. So one more here. He said on Twitter, just like we can't let large-scale mail-in ballots take root in our country, it would be a free-for-all for cheating, forgery, and theft of ballots. Whoever cheated the most would win. Likewise, social media, clean up your act now. Look, now on the issue of regulating social media, I actually do agree that we should. But we should go further than that, actually. I think these companies shouldn't be companies at all. I think social media should be a public utility. Facebook, public utility. YouTube, public utility, right? All these different social media platforms. They're platforms. They should be a public utility, regulated by an independent commission that is free of politics. Why? Because there's so much communication and so much dissemination of information that is being done on social media now that it should be a public good and independently regulated. So I don't like the idea of putting a private corporation as a gatekeeper for information and facts. I don't like that. I don't like that. But understand that that's different from what Donald Trump is proposing, right? When he says, we should regulate them. No, he wants it to be more like state media. He wants it to be more like, no, you agree with everything that I say because I'm right, you're fake news. Well, obviously I don't agree with that because that's not independent. That's not non-biased. That's not putting facts, and truth forward like you should be, right? No, it's him trying to put out his own propaganda. And that's the problem here. So understand that there are different goals at play. With anything, when it comes to Donald Trump, He wants to make sure that it serves his interests and himself and not the truth. All right. So let's move on here. A leader of a pro-Trump organization is calling for the murder of Democratic governors for enforcing the lockdown measures for the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this is Coy Griffin, head of the Cowboys for Trump. That's the organization. They are publicly calling for Democratic governors to be killed for purportedly committing treason. In an interview with the Daily Beast Will Sommer, Griffin defended telling fellow activists at an anti-lockdown rally that the only good Democrat is a dead Democrat. Yes, because, there's nothing like threatening to kill your political opponents for disagreeing with you on something. Freedom, right? Apparently that's freedom. Freedom. Okay, well, that's nice. So he said, you get to pick your poison. You either go before a firing squad or you get the end of the rope. I tell you what, partner, because he's a cowboy, as far as I'm concerned, there's not an option that's not on the table. How about locking you up for a mental issue, for threatening to kill people? Look, if you think murdering people for literally doing their jobs during a pandemic, which these governors are, for having a D next to their name, you're psychotic. There is something obviously wrong with you. You're not interested in freedom. No, you want to hurt people. That's your ideology. You can't wait to use your gun against anybody that disagrees with you. It's a fascist mindset. Thing is, right, state governors actually do have the power under the federalist system of government, the type of government that you say you agree with, right? States' rights. Oh, except when states' rights. See, what we mean by states' rights is the right to discriminate against black people when it comes to actually being able to, do emergency measures like enforcing physical distancing and wearing masks and doing a state lockdown. Well, we don't agree with that power. No, we don't agree with your rights under the 10th Amendment. We only agree as conservatives that you should have power to, make black people less than human or treat black people less than human. So, look, that's what they believe in, right? Again, disastrous. So, again, the federalist system allows them the right under the 10th Amendment to the Constitution to enforce lockdowns for the general welfare under an emergency situation. Well, a pandemic that has claimed the lives of over 100,000 or nearly 100,000 Americans is an emergency. But apparently not to the people who are running around cosplaying as freedom fighters. They don't care. All they care about is instituting their kind of authoritarian fascist ruling, part of which involves, of course, sending the poor out to die for the rich. Especially since many of the poor that are dying of COVID-19, a lot of them are disproportionately black and brown people. So that's a problem. Now, if they were really concerned about government abuse and overreach, they would be with the protesters in Minnesota. They would be arm in arm. You know why? Because there was a police officer that literally murdered a black man for allegedly committing a nonviolent crime. This is George Floyd, right? Who, look, he was killed. He was suffocated when a police officer literally held a knee to his neck. No, that's a problem. That is literally the boot of tyrannical government right there. It's ridiculous. But since it doesn't affect you, oh no, you don't care. No, this guy's a total male Karen. He's probably angry that he can't go to his favorite Hooters and drink Natty Light with his fascist friends. No, this is a attempted right-wing authoritarian terrorism. That's the problem here. And of course, a large amount of the anti-lockdown protests, they're not about the pain regular people are feeling economically because of the lockdowns. No. Despite the fact that, of course, look, there are some. Okay, so there are two different groups, as I've mentioned before. So you have the people that are actually really hurting, right? But are supportive of the lockdowns because, of course, they don't want to spread coronavirus to everybody. And so a lot of people, look, they're navigating these ancient systems of for unemployment benefits. They've already spent their $1,200 check, if they're even available or eligible to be able to get one. And so they are hurting economically. You have food banks that have seen an increase of 40% for need. I mean, and they're not getting, these food banks are not getting enough food to be able to meet this demand. And so there are people hurting. These are different than the anti-lockdown protesters that are going around, with the rocket launcher or whatever bazooka strapped to their back and there's long guns claiming that they're fighting for freedom. You're not fighting for freedom at all. At all. But anyway, they're just looking for an excuse to gun down people that they don't like. And that's what it is. Now, Salmar also reports that the type of rhetoric Griffin is espousing was becoming more common among the rest of the protesters, despite the fact that lockdown restrictions are easing across the United States. On Sunday, anti-lockdown protesters in Frankfort, Kentucky, hung an effigy of Democratic Governor Andy Beshear from a tree outside of the state capitol. The effigy bore Beshear's face and a message, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants. In North Carolina, prominent anti-lockdown activist Adam Smith, oh, we know that guy, posted a Facebook Live video saying he and other activists were willing to kill people over these restrictions. Well, here's the thing. If the restrictions are lifted, people are going to die. More than if we keep them in place and actually have the government do its job and support people while scientists work on a vaccine. That means, of course, $2,000 a month, UBI until this is over, rent and mortgage freezes, a complete moratorium on rent and mortgages. And look, these are simple things. And of course, guaranteed health care expanded to everybody. Those are the things that we should be doing, that we should have in place. And we don't, because unfortunately, this government does not care about people. It cares more about corporations and corporate donations. That's why we're in the political situation that we have. That's why we have freaking Joe Biden. That is the, presumptive Democratic nominee. That's ridiculous. No, we should have somebody who's an actual progressive. But unfortunately, we don't have it because we have a rigged political system that is rigged in favor of the wealthy against the rest of us. And that's why, of course, all this is related. That allows fascists like this guy to be able to go out there and preach to the masses like, hey, the government sucks. We should totally do things the fascist way. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrifying. This stuff is insane. And you know what? It actually defeats their own goals of reopening the United States safely. That's the other part of it that sucks. So luckily, though, I think most of the country has it figured out that, hey, look, we should wait for a vaccine. We should wait for a treatment. We shouldn't rush on opening it up. A lot of people are very concerned about opening it up, despite the fact that there are news reports you have lots of people that have hit the beach over the weekend. And a lot of smaller places, a lot of small towns and villages and stuff, they're not taking this seriously. But in the major population centers where most people are, they are taking this seriously because they're seeing the effects of COVID-19 firsthand or secondhand. And so, I mean, that's where most of the people are. And where most of the people are, most of the population is, they're actually taking this seriously. And so at least they have that figured out. All right. So let's see. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a break. We're going to come back. We got Meghan McCain on George Floyd. So that's an interesting discussion. One of the rare times that they actually have a good discussion on The View. So I'll give you the details on that and show you the video clips. And we'll kind of break it down where Meghan McCain still kind of misses the point. But we'll talk about that soon. So stay right here. Round the Nation. We'll be right back.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Welcome back to the show, Around the Nation, right here at TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, so, before I get into this, I want to thank a few patrons. Patrons, of course, allow me to continue doing this show, so thank you very much for signing up and becoming a patron. I also want to thank some channel members when I'm done with that as well. So first, patreon.com/TYT Nation. Let's go to that. Thanks to some new members here. We're at 395 patrons. So we're 5 away from 400. I wanted to hit 400 by the end of the month. I also wanted to hit that by the end of last month. But thank you so much for signing up and getting me closer and closer to that goal. So I want to thank, find some new people here. Ann Smith and Richado Sissy Boy. So I know that Richado, you are a channel member as well, so you're double dipping. I do appreciate that a lot. Also, Gail Madera, thank you. That's patreon.com/TYT Nation. Let's see. Newest channel members, I want to thank Scott Rogers and Trisha Brown, as well as Trevor Watson for signing up. You can become a channel member by hitting the join button below. Again, it all goes to help the show, to help continue this show, because like a lot of independent progressive media, we are under some financial strain due to coronavirus, due of course, to YouTube, messing around with their algorithms and stuff like that. So I do appreciate that. You really do keep us on the air. And you get like special, extras like early access to the podcast. That's the podcast we do on the weekends every couple of weeks. We do, last one was with Michael Brooks from the Michael Brooks Show. That was a good discussion. If you haven't already, check that out. We were talking tactics. I actually feel smarter talking to him because he's an incredibly intelligent guy and he's very, very busy. So I really appreciated him taking out the time to, talk to me and to hold that conversation. So check that out. That's Michael Brooks and I doing that discussion. All right. And look, patrons get early access to that. So that's kind of a cool perk. Also, the full audio podcast. All right. So let's move on. Let's go to Meghan McCain.
I think these police officers should 100% be on trial for murder. They are clearly already on trial in the court of public opinion, but I don't know how much more communities across the board, not just African-American communities, but Americans in general, can withstand this. I think these police officers should...
So that was a conservative co-host of The View, Meghan McCain, actually calling for murder charges against the 4 police officers who have now been fired in the of course, death of George Floyd. So, look, she's actually right on that. Yeah. I showed you that video yesterday, right? And it is difficult to watch. There was a handcuffed man who was basically begging to have the officer get off his neck so that he can breathe. It was so incredibly senseless what had happened. And there's widespread outrage, of course, as there should be. Right now, people are riding the streets, Minnesota, over this, and I don't think anybody should be surprised about that at all. In fact, I want to show you the rest of what Meghan McCain had said, and she's so close to getting it that I just want to show you that.
And I think when you're sitting at home and seeing a blatant murder of an unarmed black man on video, you can understand why people are reaching a fever pitch, because it doesn't seem like this is stopping. And it's not just happening in Minneapolis. It's happening all over the country, everywhere. This is a systemic problem nationally. And what's interesting on top of that is ABC had released footage this morning of George when he was originally arrested, and he's not resisting and he's not struggling. They handcuff him and take him to the side of a wall, and he's being very compliant in every way. So I think the question that so many of us have is, how do you go from being someone who's not resisting arrest, who seems to be completely complying with police officers, to having your neck suffocated 9 minutes later and you dying? And I think these police officers should 100% be on trial for murder. They are clearly already on trial in the court of public opinion, but I don't know how much more communities across the board, not just African-American communities, but Americans in general, can withstand this, especially at this moment in time when there's so much anger and so much frustration. And I really worry about these kind of riots going across the country, because I just don't think Americans can handle this anymore. It's just so blatant and egregious. And, you know, apparently if you are a police officer, and I would like to say there are great police officers everywhere, it's not a blanket statement, but when you see people like this who are just going to murder someone in broad daylight, it obviously puts a mark on all of them.
All right, she is so close. I mean, she's almost there. There's obviously a lot that I disagree with when it comes to Meghan McCain, right? But look, maybe I hope people are starting to understand that it doesn't matter how compliant you are when it comes to police officers. You're a black person, you can be as compliant as you want, or as they want, I should say. You still run the risk. You still stand a very good chance of not making it out of a police encounter alive. Regardless of the crime or alleged crimes, you don't even have to be doing an alleged crime. You don't have to be doing anything wrong. Look at Philando Castile. He's a legal gun owner that was gunned down in his car during a traffic stop. What about Kenneth Walker? Kenneth Walker defended himself after police, in plain clothes, raided his girlfriend's apartment and shot up the place over 20 times. 8 of them went into his girlfriend, killing her, right? And this was all while they had the actual suspect in custody. He shot back. He was a legal gun owner. He shot back. He's facing murder charges for shooting a cop. Or, I'm sorry, not murder charges. He's facing charges for shooting at a cop. Why? Why? I mean, you could be minding your own business. Bam. You're dead. Why? Because a police officer, their itchy trigger finger, right? It's because they don't value your life. Not only that, but look, you've got middle-aged, white middle-aged women like Meghan McCain loving to call the cops on black people for doing normal things. For example, look, it just blew up. Amy Cooper, right? Amy Cooper called the cops on a black man because he wanted to, keep her dog on a leash, right? Per the park rules. He wanted her just to keep her dog on a leash. That could have ended very badly for Christian Cooper. This is what we've been saying. It's what we've been saying all along, right? It's really two different countries for black people versus white people, but also, of course, for poor people versus wealthy people. You don't see any wealthy people being treated like this. Poor people, and of course, people who are black, which tend to be disproportionately poor because of the system that we have set up to disenfranchise African Americans more so than white people. We have that system that is set up. You see this happening more and more often, and it's disastrous. So, look, it is nice to see Meghan McCain get a little bit of awareness about this issue, but I want to avoid giving her too much credit for this, because it shouldn't take an egregious thing like this to realize that police are out of control in this country and do not respect black lives or poor lives, and never have. They're drilled to always use the maximum amount of force necessary towards people of color and towards people who are disabled, people who are poor. And look, you even have black officers, right, that are taught the same thing, that do the same thing. One of the officers in this case that was an Asian officer. Doesn't matter. It's the training. It's the culture. Take zero risk, dole out maximum force, because we're the law. We are the law. And it's going to take a lot more than Meghan McCain and other Karens to wake up for us to be able to change that. So yes, it's nice that she gets it a little bit, but there is a lot more that we can do. And there's a long way that we need to go to be able to actually start to fix this problem in this country. Because look, the roots run deep, and it is a power structure that is set up to disenfranchise people who are ultimately not in power. And it is something that is going to take a lot more than people starting to wake up. But at least it's it's the first step. Okay. All right. Anyway, I need to break up the ridiculousness with something a little bit fun. So we'll go back to Trump making fun of him. All right.
I don't use insulin. Should I be? Huh? I never thought about it. But I know a lot of people are very badly affected. Right? Unbelievable.
That was President Trump wondering if he should be taking insulin. Now, the answer is, of course, no, unless you have diabetes. People with type 1 diabetes, look, if you have type 1, that means your pancreas doesn't make insulin. And so, of course, you have to have insulin several doses every day. People with type 1 and some with type 2, of course, need the drug. They need it to survive. Does Donald Trump have diabetes? I don't know. Not that I know of. So why would he need it? Oh, right. Maybe he doesn't. Well, so then why would he say it? Lucky for him, too, right? Because it's incredibly expensive to obtain. And by the way, you shouldn't be taking, if you don't have diabetes, you should not be taking insulin because you could end up possibly dying from it, just so you know. But look, this is in the context of actually the administration doing something very positive, right? Look, you guys know the price for insulin has tripled from 2002 to 2013. Type 1 diabetics paid an average of $5,705 for insulin in 2016, nearly double what they paid in 2012, according to the Healthcare Cost Institute. Costs have gone so far up that so much that half of people with diabetes have temporarily skipped taking their insulin, according to a 2018 study by Upwell Health. So the Trump administration is doing something actually positive by capping insulin copays at $35. Good. Look, I think it should be free. But hey, a little bit of progress. And all credit to the Trump administration for actually doing something about it. But what a dumb question. Why would you ask whether or not you should be taking insulin if you don't have diabetes? This guy's supposed to be a very stable genius, but he can't help but put his foot in his mouth. I know a lot of people are very badly affected. Unbelievable. No, not unbelievable. Totally believable. I mean, it's ridiculous. He is so incredibly unintelligent. In some ways, this actually might be worse than him saying he takes hydroxychloroquine to prevent COVID-19. Maybe. I don't know. He doesn't take it, though. He's lying about that. Honestly, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. He also asked about injecting bleach or disinfectant into your systems, maybe into your lungs. Grade A stupid. Grade A stupid. If he was thinking, and I wouldn't put it past him, what if I take this to prevent diabetes? I don't know. Disastrous. Now, somebody, of course, told him that, hey, that's not how it works. This was Surgeon General Jerome Adams, who had to explain to the president that, no, your body, Mr. President, actually makes insulin endogenously. People such as you and I, we make our own insulin. So, yes, we do utilize insulin, but we make it ourselves. What? I mean, then why would you ask? I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know what's going on. But here's the thing. Understand that Trump is somebody who thinks he's got a natural ability when it comes to medicine. He said that doctors keep asking him, how do you know so much? In fact, here's him saying that he should have been a doctor.
I like this stuff. I really get it. People are surprised that I understand it. Every one of these doctors said, how do you know so much about this? Maybe I have a natural ability. Maybe I should have done that instead of running for president. But you know what? What they've done is very incredible. I understand that whole world.
I understand that whole world. Do you? Do you? I mean, imagine Dr. Donald Trump. Imagine the lawsuits for fraudulent practice. Or not just leaving a sponge in a patient, but like probably an entire surgical tray. Oh, that's where I put that thing. Dr. Trump, that's not where the heart goes. Don't tell me what to do. I know more about heart surgery than anybody ever, than any doctor. Fake news. You're fired. Bring me a new nurse, maybe a hot one. Horrible. Horrible. Maybe it's best that he became president. I don't know. I can't imagine a public service job, though, that isn't made worse by Donald Trump doing it. I'm just saying. Should have been a doctor. Ridiculous. All right. So, we're going to go from that to rage again. We have Rahm Emanuel. He's back. And he's advising Biden. Yikes. Okay. It appears that Rahm Emanuel is back, and he is having regular conversations with presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden. And guess what he's talking about? Economic policy. Great. Now, this is according to a report from the Chicago Tribune. Now, Emanuel has been having conversations with Biden on economic issues like reopening the country, infrastructure, and more, which of course means disaster. How do I know that? It's because Rahm Emanuel is not a friend of progressives. Not interested at all in progressive policy. In fact, he is one of the people who was tanking or helping tank Medicare for all, who helped tank a public option. And so this is not somebody who is really good for Joe Biden to be talking to. That's as if Joe Biden, of course, would listen to progressives, which is a ridiculous idea because he would never listen to progressives. So he's actually one of the guys who called liberal activists on healthcare effing retarded. That's a quote, right? Obviously unacceptable to say in any context. That's some pretty ableist BS. But he went after progressives for challenging corporate Democrats. And so, of course, he's not a friend to us. No, he is one of the top corporate Democrat hacks and gets lots and lots of money from Wall Street. To illustrate that, he was talking on the Hacks on Tap podcast, right? So that's fun. And this is co-hosted by Obama administration alum and Chicagoan David Axelrod and a GOP political strategist named Mike Murphy. So at one point, Axelrod notes, Rahm, you've been involved with the Biden campaign and talking through their economic plans, which of course is why they're so garbage. He then asked Emanuel whether coronavirus makes it more likely Biden will offer a quote unquote bolder progressive agenda. To which Emanuel responds, the moment may call for it, and I'm a big believer in never allowing a crisis to go to waste. But the whole primary was a couple of people in our party talking about a revolution and a couple of people in our party talking more reform than revolution, or of course, as Biden put it, nothing will fundamentally change. So you're looking at, if Joe Biden wins, a couple of tweaks on the outside, right? Little fixes here and there, a couple of regulations put back, that Trump had eliminated, but otherwise basically the same. In fact, their tax proposal is disastrous. They're putting they proposed putting the top tax bracket to 28%. It's currently at 21%. Guess what it was before the Trump tax cuts? 35%. To 28%. No, ridiculous. It should be 70%. That's what I think. And again, that's the top marginal tax bracket. Don't flip out. That's for people making over, I would say, $1 million a year. That's just me. I'd do it a little bit more aggressively than a lot of people, but that's just me. Because you know what? We've got some important things to fund, like infrastructure, like healthcare, all that. So there's more. Emanuel says, what Biden is now saying is, well, the post-COVID world requires a revolution. No, Biden is not saying that. And I'm surprised because he did not win on the revolution model. He won in the reform model. Let's get things really, really clear here. Joe Biden didn't win on any model. Joe Biden got the backing of every establishment Democrat, including Pete Buttigieg, who was beating him in the polls and in delegates. Joe Biden was about to drop. He had no infrastructure and he had almost no money. His campaign was going broke. But then Obama made some calls behind the scenes and said, you guys need to drop and support Joe Biden. Because Joe Biden did well in South Carolina, thanks to his endorsement, the endorsement of Jim Clyburn, which turned out to be an incredibly pivotal endorsement. And I wish Bernie Sanders had gone after that endorsement, or at least maybe not pissed him off and just, got him to sit out of the primary and not endorse his opponent. Might have helped out a little bit. And so, but yeah, Obama made some calls, and now, of course, we have Joe Biden. So don't tell me that he won on the reform model. He didn't win on anything. Bloody Monday. That's what it was. All right, so that said, Emanuel said Trump makes this comparison, right? And it's a ridiculous comparison between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Says Trump's already offering a revolution. And he said, I'm not sure revolution is going to be reassuring to Southfield, Michigan, Bloomfield, Michigan, the suburbs out of Milwaukee, the suburbs in Phoenix. You know what he's talking about? He's talking about white suburban Republican voters. That's who Rahm Emanuel thinks should be the Democratic electorate. That's who we should go after, white suburban Republicans, because they'll definitely not vote for Donald Trump. Look, we got the never Trump demographic. We got the Jennifer Rubins, and we got the Rick Wilsons. We got those guys. Why do we need progressives? No, progressives are effing retarded, and we shouldn't have them at all in our party. We should shun them to the corners of the earth. Get them out of our party. No, we represent the rich. We represent the corporations. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's who Rahm Emanuel represents. But you know what he's saying, of course. He's saying, hey, Joe, I'm a little concerned that you've adopted a tiny bit of Bernie Sanders rhetoric, and we can't go too far to the left. We can't do that. And Biden he's got no plans to run to the left. Not in any substantive way. So understand that, right? Now, I'm not saying that, you should not support or vote for Joe Biden in order to get rid of Trump. I'm saying, look, if you want to vote tactically, that's your choice. I'm not going to vote shame anybody for or against Joe Biden. But understand that you vote for him, this is what you're getting. You're not getting any fundamental change. These committees or task forces that have some very great dedicated progressives on that are going to try like hell to try to get progressive policy, it's not going to do any good. It's just not. Biden's not going to go in our direction in any substantive way. And we got to be honest about that. And if we're honest about that and go to the polls and still say, look, I can't support Donald Trump or I can't vote for Donald Trump, that'd be horrible, right? We can't afford another 4 years. Totally get you. Totally with you on that, right? Can't afford it another 4 years, especially climate change, COVID-19, all this stuff, right? But understand that none of this is changing Joe Biden's mind. I mean, we should already know that because of the way that Joe Biden still continues to rail against universal health care under a Medicare for all system. He's not going to go to our direction on that. So let's just be honest, right? So now Rahm Emanuel, he goes back and he says, quote, my view is to go back and let's basically raise the floor on the New Deal, which is a guarantee in and around retirement security, guarantee in and around healthcare security, and guarantee in and around the education of your children, all the way through post-high school. That would be the most important thing we could do that is both fundamental and structural, so those elements that come to a middle-class life have more foundational support than they did pre the crisis. What does that even mean? I mean, let's guarantee in and around healthcare. Honestly, look, to me, I've got a little spider sense when it comes to bullshit, right? And this is just another way of saying we want to guarantee, quote unquote, access to healthcare. Why not just guarantee healthcare? Like Medicare for all. Oh, right. Rahm Emanuel's donors, and as well as Joe Biden's donors, they're in the health industry, the insurance industry specifically, right? They have lobbied successfully, and not only that, but the pharmaceutical industry as well, have all lobbied, given tens of thousands of dollars to Joe Biden and Rahm Emanuel to go against Medicare for all. And that's it. Corporate donors don't want it. And so if the corporate donors don't want it, the Democratic Party and their nominee shouldn't want it either. And that's the truth of the situation. And so that's why he's saying, well, we want to guarantee in and around healthcare and, retirement and all that stuff. And, education through post-high school. Not in favor of free college, of course, and also not in favor of expanding Social Security. That is not in Rahm Emanuel's platform. That is not really in Joe Biden's platform. It's just not. It's just not. And so the irony, of course, is we had somebody who actually, and he's talking about Rahm Emanuel. He's talking about, let's expand on the New Deal, right? We had a person that was running to actually expand the New Deal, who was a real New Deal Democrat. Now, Bernie Sanders was a reformist. He was a real reformist, not a revolutionary, right? He was a reformist candidate, but he had excellent reforms and excellent ideas, right? So, no, we weren't talking about a revolution, not a real one, a political revolution to get modest center-left policy like universal health care. Because when you look at us compared to the rest of the world, we are massively center-right. No, I'm sorry, we're not center-right. We are massively right-wing. Whereas in countries where they have universal health care, that is considered a centrist, center-right position. We're nowhere near leftist. Bernie Sanders would be a centrist politician. And so this whole talk about revolution versus reform. Oh, Joe Biden's a reform candidate. No, he's not. Absolute garbage. He's not the reformist. He's not a reformist candidate at all. He wants to continue our rightward slide, or at least continue the status quo. It's absolutely ridiculous. We had somebody that did actually try to promote the New Deal, and people like Rahm Emanuel buried him. David Axelrod buried him. Now, the reason, look, having this guy involved, or that we don't want this guy involved in any campaign. And right now, he's not officially part of the campaign. He's not running for office or anything like that. He's just advising Biden, but he shouldn't be anywhere near the Biden campaign because he's toxic. He's absolutely toxic. He's a toxic centrist. He's an ally to Wall Street. Not only that, but he's also, look, when he was running Chicago, he buried the Laquan McDonald tape. He shouldn't be near any campaign or any person of power. Shouldn't be giving anyone advice. He should be gone, out of politics. People like him are why Democrats continue to lose. His advice of more centrism, or more right-wing, I should say, less progressivism, is not what we need to see, but unfortunately, exactly what we expect to see from both him and, of course, unfortunately, the campaign of Joe Biden, who I think, look, I see the election going a couple of ways, right? I do see Joe Biden pulling out a bare win, right? Like a tiny win over Donald Trump. Why? It's not because of his policies. It's because of COVID-19. It's because of this pandemic. It's because of Donald Trump being so disastrously unpopular that he could have allow someone like Joe Biden, who's running on basically nothing at all, blue MAGA, right? Let's get back to normal. Let's get back to what we had before that actually created Donald Trump in the first place. That's what he's running on. People are so desperate right now for any sort of return to quote unquote normalcy, which unfortunately is still pretty bad or was still pretty bad, that they'll vote for Joe Biden. That's one of the things I see. There's also, of course, the possibility that he could take votes for granted. Biden could, and end up losing and giving Donald Trump 4 more years. And that's the disastrous situation that we're in. And it's unfortunate because, he knows, Biden knows that he needs progressive votes to win or should be voting, courting progressives. And yet he's having conversations with Rahm Emanuel and he's considering Jamie Dimon for his cabinet and Michael Bloomberg. And all of those are just a gigantic slap in the face to progressives, the very voters that he really, really needs. This whole election is just completely disastrous and a 100% shit show. All right. I think I'm pretty clear on that. Well, I'm glad today actually went a little bit better tech-wise. So thank you for joining me on today's show. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. I'm going to check to see if there are any super chats here. I don't know if there were any. Nope, negative. But thank you for chatting, sharing the stream, and being part of this entire thing. So I do appreciate you guys. Thank you. We're going to head out a minute early, but we'll see you tomorrow for another great show. Thank you guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you guys tomorrow right here, 3 p.m. Eastern. TYT Nation. I'm outie.
Please clap.
Mike Pounds.
Wait. You're getting nervous, man. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.